Welcome back to Hawk Off the Press. My name is Madison Hricik. I am the Iowa football beat reporter for the Gazette, and I have our Iowa State reporter here with us today, Rob Gray. Rob, welcome back.
Hi, it's been a while. How are you, Madison?
I'm doing good, surviving my first Midwestern winter, or at least part of the beginnings of it.
You got a
Last
bad
couple
one.
weeks of all the snow. I know I started off with a pretty good blizzard, so I feel like we're just jumping straight into the deep end with it. I'm okay with that, though.
That's right. Yeah.
So welcome back. I know that the last time you and I talked was football Cyhawk Week, and we're going to talk about basketball Cyhawk Week. I'm going to call it Cyhawk Week because we got the men playing on Thursday, but the women play on Wednesday. So it just seems more productive to just kind of call it as a week in and of itself. But first things first, let's talk a little bit about football since that's taken the priority for Iowa State these last couple days. Matt Campbell now heading over to Penn State. You just got back from the introductory press conference for the Cyclones' new head coach. Give us a little bit of an update on how that went.
Yeah. It's about an hour if you include time on the side with Jamie Pollard and talking about everything from how funds are distributed at the university to how you go above and beyond the revenue sharing cap and what Iowa State can do and can't do vis-a-vis other places like Penn State. But the head coach, Jimmy Rogers, spent time at South Dakota State, was a star player there, lightly recruited guy, worked himself into the leading tackler at the school all time, at least when he graduated, and led him to a national championship with Mark Gronowski in 2023. And went to Washington State last season. He didn't think it would be only one season, but the way these move, and both he and Pollard, and I'm sure everyone else talks about just how they've got to figure out a way that this calendar is different, to have to do this stuff. He leaves his team that's actually playing in a bowl game, I think. Campbell leaves Iowa State for tremendous resources at Penn State, closer to home too, family. It's not ideal, I guess, for anyone but me, in that I spent all day Friday at the Jacobson Building at Iowa State waiting for something to become official in terms of Campbell leaving and what it was going to look like with the next head coach. And little did I know, behind the scenes, Jamie Pollard and his staff and others were working to scramble to try to get somebody in place almost immediately. So, Rogers got him to a bowl game in 1 year when he had to replace almost an entire roster. It's looking like he'll certainly have to replace a good chunk of Iowa State's as well. So, that's all fluid, but fortunately, that's all coming in bits and pieces now after that whirlwind, really 48 hours, but a lot condensed into that last 6 to 8 on Friday into Friday night.
Yeah, and you mentioned the rebuild or soon to be rebuild potentially with this Iowa State team. They did opt out of a bowl game on Sunday, one of a handful of teams that opted out of a bowl game for various reasons. But Iowa State was one of the first ones to kind of make that public on Sunday morning. So their offseason already underway. There's been a number of players on the football side of things that are declaring for the transfer portal already, if they haven't, and which that opens January 2nd. So we're a little less than a month away. But enough about football. We're here to talk about basketball. We'll talk about basketball. Let's start with the women here. This will be a fun matchup between Iowa, who's 9-0, and Iowa State, who's 10-0. Both teams are ranked. Both teams have had a really good start to this season. Obviously, this rivalry is good regardless of what sport it is. But with women's basketball, with the two of them being ranked in recent history, it adds a lot more excitement to it. Rob, what do you make of this matchup in terms of how it's looked in previous seasons?
Yeah, I think it should be another really good one. I mean, I think 9 of the last 11 have been 10 points or fewer. Iowa's won, I believe, 8 of the last 9. But interestingly enough, the last time Iowa State won was at Hilton Coliseum, and Ashley Jones and Caitlin Clark dueled to 26 points apiece, and Iowa State came out on top 77-70. But what Iowa's got to do, and obviously they've got a great post player, but they've got to figure out how to stop or slow Audie Crooks, who's leading the nation in scoring, second field goal percentage. She's doing it against everybody. She scored in double figures since her first game as a freshman against Butler. I think it's 77 games in a row, and teams have done everything this season. And obviously, I'm going to play great competition. I mean, they got solid competition recently with Marquette and then Indiana. certainly in the shootout with the Hoosiers. But I don't know. Both teams are great offensively. Iowa State's, I think, third nationally in points per game. Again, they played a lot of teams they can pile up points on, as we saw in their last one, more than doubling up Northern Illinois 105-52. So, how much of it is fool's gold? I think Iowa State's a pretty complete team, and Iowa's really a really competitive. You know, uh, Again, I think they're 19th in points per game, but also better defense. Coach Bill Fenley said, they're by far the best team they will have played, and for all across the board. And no matter what happens, I think, to paraphrase him, he said, if there's things we're able to do well, we should be able to do well against about everyone else we play. And if there are areas where we don't do well, at least we'll identify, they'll bring up those flaws that maybe a Northern Illinois or a Sacred Heart can't, or expose them, as it were. So I see probably a tightly contested game, but I mean, Iowa State is the way they're shooting the ball from 3-point range, both the men and the women, is outstanding, particularly the men. But Ariana Jackson grew up in Des Moines. This is a big one for her. Drivus won the last three. She's shooting over 50% from three. Addie Brown had her triple double recently against Norfolk State. She's averaging, I think 13 and change, 9 rebounds, 6 assists. So, and Jada Williams has just been as dynamic and as downhill as they've expected. So, from an Iowa State perspective, they think they're built for a deep March run, but I'm sure Iowa feels the same way. And both sitting at 10 or 11. I was looking at both teams' game notes. It's hard to think of a cutoff as like both are in the top 11. But even though at least one of the teams has been ranked, I think, or in both most of the time in the last 4 meetings, but at least one has been ranked in the past 4 meetings. These are teams that both could make a lot of noise come March. So it should be a fun game at Hilton Coliseum with a really good crowd.
I think one of the things that stood out to me the most with Iowa State, I mean, obviously we could talk about Audie Crooks all day long and just how good she's been, particularly to start this year. But it really does feel like Iowa State's found a way to have a complete team this early on. Usually, when you think of a complete team, you're looking at something that is a season long process. You get to February, then you get to the conference tournament, and you're like, okay, this is the complete team that they've been referencing. And it feels like Iowa State is right there. I mean, you have 3 players that are averaging in double figures right now, including Audie Crooks and Addie Brown, as you mentioned. But it's just, it does feel like they've got that nice balance so far this year. And Iowa's found a nice balance themselves too, on the women's side, especially. But I just think with Iowa State, there's something so impressive with just how genuinely like complete and full picture they already look in early December.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I've noticed others who are on the beat. It's Again, they can play faster than they've ever played. And Fenley said they've never had a player like Jada Williams. I mean, they've had great point guards, but she's capable of, again, getting into the paint, being really disruptive defensively. I've got a cat howling at me that apparently got stuffed in my office here, which is just great. But and then you throw Reese Beatty in the mix. She missed the last game with a foot deal. It's unsure what her situation is, but she's been great off the bench as well. But Kenzie Harris shooting it at a great clip, 50% from 3. Jackson's actually up to 52.6. Kenzie Harris was hurt most of last season. So many players. Sydney Harris is only shooting 36% from 3, but she was 48 last season, or 47, 46, somewhere in there. So again, and Alyssa Williams as a backup big for the Cyclones has been really, really, really good for them on both ends of the floor. And shooting her free throws great, which is a big improvement for her. So complete is a good term for it. I think Iowa's pretty complete as well. But when you look at frontline scorer, when you look at dynamic point guard, when you look at a do-everything player like Addie Brown at the top, and then you have 50% three-point shooters on top of that and more. Yeah, in terms of how deep they can go in their rotation, this is as dangerous an Iowa State team as Bill Fenley has had in a long time.
Yeah, and you mentioned a dynamic point guard. One thing that is a positive for Iowa leading into this game is head coach Jan Jensen did say Chit Chat Wright will be ready to go. against Iowa State on Wednesday. She's kind of had a couple early season injuries, that concussion during the tournament earlier this year that's kind of held her back. But I mean, having her back will be really nice. She's somebody who is, you can see how wise she is with her basketball IQ. And I think that's what stood out for me, at least, is that you can see her thinking on the court, but not necessarily overthinking. She's great with decision making. And we're starting to see her take advantage of her ability to shoot the ball. I know Jensen's talked a ton about Wright being a pass first kind of point guard, but I think that Wright's ability to start figuring out when she can take the shot and having the confidence to take the shot is starting to come up a little bit too, which is a nice positive. But I do think one thing that is going to stand out for me, at least in terms of the women's side of the matchup, and we'll get to the men here in a second, but I agree with what you said right at the start of this conversation, where it's going to come down to the post players. Can Iowa find a way to slow down Audie Crooks, who's averaging almost 30 points per game right now, which is an insane stat, by the way. I think it's like 27.2, if I remember. I have
It's about right. Yeah, it's right there. 27.2, 27.3, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane. That is an insane number of points per
27.6.
game.
Yeah.
Exactly. That is insane. And so if can Iowa State slow her down, what can Ava Hayden do to be able to try and balance that out on the offensive side for Iowa? I think that's going to be the matchup that really drives the decision making in this game.
Well, and can you get Audie Crooks in foul trouble because of Hayden's ability to score in the interior? And that's where the way Elisa Williams has come on may be crucial for Iowa State. But Crooks generally manages to avoid foul trouble one way or another. But I would think that would be a great strategy for Iowa to try to get her, blow by her, whether it's with Hayden or whether it's just guards attacking the paint, and get some fouls on her early, get her off the floor, because her last game, she didn't play the last 13 minutes of the game. She had 30 points in 19 minutes. I mean, that's how efficient she is, and that team for some of the game was straight up against her. The game she had 43 straight up defense, and teams have tried everything against her since I've covered this team. Go straight up and see if you can make everyone else have an off night and try to outscore them. Doesn't usually work. Double team doesn't usually work. Triple team really doesn't work. The hedge, the bringing in the guard underneath, that's, I think, one of the more successful things teams do when they lob it into her frequently. If you can bring an athletic guard in underneath to come and strafe away at that basketball as she's getting her sure hands on it, that's something that I have no idea how Coach Sanson's going to attack her, because there's a lot of darned if you do, darned if you don't situations with Audie Crooks.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes her such a dangerous player to try and plan for, is that she does a great job of managing fouls and preventing opportunities for her to get off the court in that sense. But at the same time, she does it so smartly. And I think like again, it goes back to that basketball IQ. It just is so, she knows when to maybe make a decision in the last moment that prevents her from getting a foul and instead drawing an offensive foul or something along those lines. And it's the maturity that she has. She's definitely flaunted quite a bit this year.
Yeah, there are times where you can tell that opposing teams are really, really working to try to get her as she turns to whether she actually connects with an elbow as she turns or whether she doesn't, get the official to notice. But that's a basketball move too. So, I mean, she's a big presence who, as she turns, there aren't too many people who can stop that unless you're really athletic and taller. So, but as you said, she manages it well. I mean, she doesn't do anything. Her game is very self-contained. It's efficient, and again, it's really, really hard to stop. The one way it's been stopped in the past is put her on the free throw line, where she was just over, somewhere in the 60% range last season, a little bit above. She's been better in that area this season, but not probably where she would want to be. If there's one thing that maybe she's not been as good at as she would like to be, but again, there's improvement every season there too. So that's a matchup and again, the point guard matchup I think is really good too. and others. But I mean, I think if Iowa wins the game, they will have not allowed Audie Crooks to do Audie Crooks things every minute she's on the floor. And if Iowa State wins the game, Audie Crooks, they could survive Audie Crooks not scoring 40 points. I mean,
Mhm.
because Addie Brown scored 40 points before too. Thank you. Cat's gone. Um, uh, so there are a lot of options there. I know Iowa has options as well, but Addie Brown is the true wild card for the Cyclones because she could go off anytime, and she hasn't had any big scoring games. If Iowa really sells out on making it tough for Audie Crooks to get the ball, period, whether having somebody up front and somebody in the back end, Addie Brown could easily drop in a bunch of points. And we haven't seen Jada Williams explode in points. That's not necessarily her forte. She does a lot of other things, steals, occasionally rebounds really well from the point guard spot, and obviously the assist number is there along with Addie Brown. But yeah, it's just going to be a fun game.
Yeah, and Iowa leads the women's series 32-23, and that game will be on December 10th, so Wednesday at 6 p.m. All
Awesome.
right, so let's flip over to the men real quick. Let's start with the most obvious thing, and that is Iowa State knocking off Purdue over the weekend. Just to add on to all of the fun things that you had to deal with this past weekend, you also got to watch the number one team in the country fall on the road to the Iowa State men. The Cyclones are now number 4 in the country because of that. That was an insane game because it wasn't even close. And I think that was the thing that impressed most people is it wasn't necessarily a close game. What about that win was so dominant for Iowa State?
Yeah, it's interesting is when you win like that at Mackey Arena, it's everything, right? I mean, I believe it was Purdue's largest, most lopsided home loss to a non-conference team. They've been playing. They've had 128 seasons of basketball they played. Tied for the most lopsided loss by an AP number 1 ranked team at home in history since that polls existed. And it was complete. Iowa State got out Iowa Stated early, but they shot it so well. I mean, Penn State goes 11-0 points off turnovers. That's Iowa State's bread and butter. That's Iowa State's calling card. After that, Iowa State goes 17-2 points off turnovers. I mean, everyone from, Kylian Touré, the French sensation from Pommier near Lyon. He probably, if he hears me, but he probably won't. He'll probably tell me I didn't quite pronounce it correctly, but I've been working on it. That guy continues to just impress on every stage, does everything so well. He seems to be in the right spot all the time. And they get Tamin Lipsey back, and Tamin Lipsey looked like Tamin Lipsey. I think a stat line of 9, 6, and 5. And Joshua Jefferson. I mean, here's the thing with the Cyclones. They're shooting the 3-point ball at such an incredible clip. I mean, Milan Momcilovic is over 50% now. He was hitting dagger fadeaways in that game when Iowa State was pulling away in the second half. And, only up 4 at halftime. And TJ Otzelberger said after the game, the Cyclones head coach, that they said, we were like, don't settle. Don't feel satisfied with that. We should have been up 10 or more. If we do a couple of other things, and they come out in the second half and it's just an onslaught and Purdue can't turn it off. And with the talent that they have and the way they play in that gym, that was utterly stunning. It's also something Iowa State fans certainly needed in the wake of the Campbell chaos. So even Tamin Lipsey referenced in, as a lifelong Ames resident and Cyclone fan growing up himself, that they, and he'd get to form, a relationship with Coach Campbell and obviously a lot of football players, and certainly wished him well and all that. But that was jarring. And you said we're happy we're able to get him a win to maybe help out with everything that was going on, and a win that clearly proved that Iowa State is at minimum, if they stay healthy, unlike last season where they looked to be about the same thing, a true Final Four contender, if not a national championship contender, because that, you want to talk complete team. That team is complete to the point where TJ's playing 10 guys, not rotationally, but based on them, I think, as he says, quote, going to getting their stuff. So it's not always the same guys who get the most minutes outside of your Jeffersons, your Lipsies when healthy, your Torres, who it's hard to take off the floor, Momcilovic's and all that. It was a stunning win because the first half looked like I expected the game to look. Iowa State got down by 5, they recovered, kept the shooting hot, cut their own turnovers down, and took the 4-point lead. But then to pile on, you kept thinking Purdue was going to have a run. And I'm sure everyone in Mackey Arena thought Purdue's going to have a run because they always do in their place. And they just couldn't do it. They kept turning it over. They missed a lot of open shots. Iowa State defended really well at the same time, too. That's how you have a recipe for getting up by as many as 27 points and winning by an historic 23 points in West Lafayette, Indiana.
Yeah, you talk about a program and just an athletics department that just kind of needed a little bit of something to mellow out the chaos, especially with Matt Campbell heading to Penn State and just all of the craziness that was going on the football side. I remember like I was getting ready to go to the Iowa men's basketball game and I saw the score and I was like, wait a second, hold on. I was one of those like I genuinely had to do a double take. It was like, wait, hold on a second. And I watched a good chunk of that second half and truly it just looked like Purdue just didn't have an answer for anything. And I think that was the most impressive part because all throughout the preseason and through the first couple games leading up to that matchup, it really did look like Purdue was going to do the Purdue thing it's always done and just be dominant throughout the regular season. And for Iowa State to just come in there and make it look easy. I like truly that second half, it just looked easy to play a Purdue team was super, super impressive.
Yeah, that was something that struck me too. Purdue would go in stretches where they'd score 3 straight possessions. The problem is Iowa State would score a minimum of 2 and often match them by scoring 3 straight possessions. So there was no way for them to kind of the lead, and they were turning it over at such a high rate. It's just again they had no answer, which I'm sure just flummoxed their fans because they'd won 36 straight non-conference games at home. Um, they're going to come to Hilton next season. That's going to be an electric atmosphere. It was great they're home and home. TJ Alzberger's got a ton of respect for Matt Painter, considers him a mentor. But another guy in that game that to keep an eye on Thursday is Blake Buchanan, the Virginia transfer. I mean, he was a huge factor in winning that game. And he's really, really come on after a slow start. TJ Alzberger told him, hey, you are going to get double-doubles. You are going to be a huge activity guy, both as a big man, as a 6'10 force on the offensive glass, defensive glass, but he's also a really smart passer. I mean, against Purdue, it's 12 points, 9 rebounds. Going against Oscar Clough, who Iowa State wanted, Purdue got. Blake Buchanan, they think, oh, that's the backup plan. I would argue Blake Buchanan outplayed Oscar Clough, who's a really good player and played well in that game. But it was just, I guess, a lot of guys from Iowa State that can impact games in winning ways, and that's a big. And I even mentioned Jamarian Bateman, another great freshman off the bench. By the way, he's hit 7 threes in a game and is shooting 47% from 3.
Because
And
that's a normal number.
yeah, and that was the worry probably for Cyclone fans going in. The previous game, Alcorn State just blew them out, school record number of 3-pointers, and shot at an unbelievable rate from 3. And you think, oh, when does it revert to the mean? Well, what is the mean for this team? I don't know, because they shot it incredibly well against Purdue too. And of course, law of averages doesn't mean one game is great, one game brings it to average. It can be a stretch, and we'll see if Iowa State continues stretch there. But I think they'll be able to get a lot from Joshua Jefferson. I mean, he's just such a well-rounded player, so tough inside. And another thing that was really impressive about that Purdue game is he was in foul trouble, especially in the first half. Didn't play nearly as many minutes as he normally does. Didn't produce. He produced well, but not like he normally does. And they found ways to make up for that against, again, a team that top ranked in the nation, but just so many great players, from the point guard Smith to the shooter Lawyer, who really had an off day. Kaufman ran. I mean, that's a great basketball team that's going to make a lot of noise in March too. So a game that really could help Iowa State move up a seed line almost, if it comes down to it, once they're getting towards Selection Sunday, and if Iowa State's able to again stay healthy and make the type of noise in the Big 12 here eventually, as that gets ready to start in a week and a half ish or a couple weeks.
Yeah, I think you're pretty correct when you say that's a game that a committee can look at and say this this head-to-head is worthy enough to help kind of influence where Iowa State could end up come March Madness. But I'm interested in hearing your perspective on this, Rob. When you look at this Iowa men's team, they're knocking on the door of the top 25, number 6 this week, 26, excuse me. And I think the thing that stands out to me when you look specifically at stats, not necessarily looking at film or anything, you're really kind of seeing Bennett Sturts really handle this offense as just kind of the main guy. He's the only one that's averaging double figures in a game right now. He's got 18.8. You have 3 others that are knocking on the door, both averaging over 8 points a game, not at that 9-point game threshold just yet. But I'm interested, like when you look at that comparison of just Iowa State having so many individual players that can score in high quality quantities and qualities, the way that you just mentioned, to Iowa's ability to continue to get the ball to Bennett to set him up for those positions, and you're starting to see some of those other players take that. How does that balance out? How does that set things up in terms of a matchup Thursday night?
Well, again, I mean, they Manuel was such a huge force on the offensive glass. They were up against that against Purdue, one of the best offensive rebound teams in the country. Fared well for Iowa State there, but Sturts does so many things. It's a straw that stirs the drink, as it were. I mean, from scores it when he needs it, assists it whenever. Does a little bit of everything. Good steals numbers. Good free throw shooter. I mean, just a rock solid player there to start it out. And they've developed a good rotation. They're number 26 in KenPom too, and 33rd in defense. I mean, after the McCaffrey era, to see an Iowa team rated top 100 in KenPom was something. And Iowa State's now 2 in KenPom, top 5 in both offensive rating and defensive rating. The offensive rating is a real eye popper. To flip the script from what I was talking about from the McCaffrey era to the McCollum era, that's been the struggle for Iowa State. The defense has always been there, but now the offense is there as well. They asked Milan Momcilovic to take higher degree of difficulty shots, increase his volume from not only 3-point range, but difficult twos. And he's done that, and he's still shooting at a great rate. Clearly his confidence is sky high. I think Iowa's going to have a really, really hard time in Hilton Coliseum on Thursday, but I think they're good enough, and I think they're extremely well coached, and we have Bennett Sturts on your team. A lot of things can happen, and frankly, Iowa State in the Cyhawk game and Iowa, sometimes a team that looks a lot better than the other one, it doesn't always come out on top, and I don't think there's that big of a gap. Again, 2 in KenPom to 26 in KenPom, the advanced analytics site, and Iowa's really, really impressed me at this point, but this is going to be a whole different challenge at Hilton Coliseum. Is finally going to feel like Hilton Coliseum for the first time this season. And I have to correct myself. Of course, I was thinking of the women that start in a couple weeks, 10 games, 10 days. Men's season in the Big 12 doesn't start till early January. But either way, it's going to be a fun game, and Iowa will challenge them. This could be a really tight game. I feel like Iowa State probably wins this game 3 possessions plus, but we'll see what happens, because again, kudos to McCollum and the group that he's brought in and added to, and some holdovers he's kept, like Koch, or brought back, I guess, however you want to think about it. They're a really, really, really good and connected basketball team, but I would think Iowa State's as connected as I've seen them under Coach Otzelberger, which is saying something, because they've been really, really well connected in each of his first 4 seasons.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's going to be the most interesting in terms from an Iowa perspective, particularly once the Hawkeyes really get into Big Ten play, we saw how Iowa handled Michigan State, and they really did struggle, especially with the atmosphere. That was the first time a lot of those players had really been in that high intensity atmosphere that Michigan State is known for. Iowa State, Hilton Coliseum, known for the exact same thing. So I think one of the things, at least for me, that I'll be watching for is, have they improved? What did they learn from experiencing that environment in East Lansing? How are they prepared? How do they prepare for it differently? What are they expecting to be different, to be the same against Iowa State? Because I mean, Hilton Coliseum, this will be my first time too, so I think there's some excitement for me coming from this. But I mean, there's a reason that Hilton Coliseum is considered one of the best college basketball environments in the country, especially when Iowa State is playing the way that Iowa State just played against Purdue.
Yeah, for sure. And I look at that Michigan State game. I mean, Iowa just got owned on the glass in that game. And it, again, that was their first for this group. That was like a game that going back to what the women's side, what Bill Fenley said about a team as good as Iowa being able to quote unquote expose cyclone flaws that other lesser teams have not been able to expose. Well, Iowa got exposed in some ways in that game. Well coached team, a lot of guys with want to, great player at the top of it in Sturts. These guys are going to pour into that and really work on those areas of deficiencies which were highlighted in that game and get better. So I
Mhm.
mean, Ken Palmas, this is a 13-point Iowa State win. I think it could be. I think it could be highly competitive for quite a while. I do think Iowa State does pull away, like I said, wins fairly comfortably, at least. But this is a hard-nosed Iowa team, and we haven't seen, with all due respect to the past group, we haven't seen a really truly hard-nosed Iowa team in a while. And when you have that type of mentality, you can go in. And again, having faced it, like you said, in East Lansing, I still think Hilton has a little bit of an edge in terms of atmosphere, particularly when you're talking about an in-state versus Cyhawk rivalry game. But that game, regardless of losing by 19 points, that game will make Iowa better. Now, does it make them better enough to go into Ames and steal one against the number 4 team in the country? I doubt it, but I certainly don't discount the possibility that they can do it because, again, high quality head coach, great point guard at the top, a lot of good pieces. It's going to be a challenge, certainly, for the Cyclones to do the things they want to do for anything approaching 40 minutes.
Yeah, and one thing about the Hawkeyes that I think has impressed me since the Michigan State game was their ability to bounce back against Maryland. That was a 19-point victory over the Terrapins on Sunday. It was 83-64, and it was one of those games where they kind of got off to an early run, then they settled in, and that was kind of it. Despite the fact that, I mean, Maryland had uh 24 free throw attempts throughout the game, and they still lost by 19. And so some of that does obviously fall in the Terrapins' free throw abilities, but I did think the bounce back was better. I thought the rebounding was a little bit better in that game. I thought Iowa just their offense ran better. And I think that just the ability to bounce back from just the immediate loss against Michigan State was key. And now I think we're looking, as we mentioned, that bigger picture. Like, how can you take those lessons that you learned? You applied it to the next opponent. Can you apply it to a very similar situation when you were in East Lansing just a week ago? And I think that's going to be where we really see what this Hawkeye team could be made of throughout this year.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the free throws thing too. That's another thing the Cyclones stress offensively is getting to the free throw line, and they've got a guy off the bench, Dominic Nelson, who I haven't mentioned yet, that is incredible at getting to the line. And it's been a bit of an adventure from a percentage standpoint this season, but I believe last season he shot more free throws than anyone at the Division One level when he was WAC Player of the Year at Utah Valley. He's an X factor in this game. I mean, I think both teams are loaded or have a fair amount of potential X factors in this game. But if he can get into the paint when he's in the game, he missed a game. Taman Lipsey had missed 3 games before coming back for Purdue, but he's a slasher that is hard to keep from the foul line. And if Iowa State shoots a lot of free throws in this game, that makes it that much more difficult for Iowa. But certainly, eh, again, I think it being a Cyhawk game, I think Iowa wants to make some type of statement. Um, I still, as I've said repeatedly, I still think Iowa State ends up winning comfortably, but I think Iowa's got a lot to look forward to this season because they're going to keep building under McCollum, and the belief is there, and the to quote Matt Campbell, the attitude and effort is there, and it's gonna, I think, produce some really good things for the Hawkeyes this season. Who have, from an analytics standpoint, from an eye test standpoint, certainly at times been really good.
Yeah, there's a lot to look forward to with these two basketball games over the next couple of days. Rob, I know that you've been incredibly busy, and we appreciate all of your effort throughout the last week plus now. Obviously, football season in behind us, but the chaos of it is still very much full throttle. So I thank you for your time to come and sit and chat with me. If you guys like this content, Hawk Off the Press comes out every week. There's also a free newsletter with the exact same name that you can subscribe to that comes out every Friday morning. Same name right on the Gazette.com. Thank you so much for watching. Rob, thank you for joining, and we will see you next time.